Now, the next part of this, and the final part of this, is to replace the factory trigger spring with our competition trigger spring, which is slightly heavier in weight. Again, this is an inverse relationship. And to gain access to that, it's inside the trigger bar here. So we're going to go ahead and have to take out the trigger and do the whole thing. So let me hustle through this if I can. You've seen a lot of this on some of our other videos. But I'll repeat, taking a punch now to the trigger pin and use my hammer. Out comes the trigger pin. And I'm going to, while I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and do the locking block pin. Okay, out comes the locking block pin. Okay, and there are the two pins. So I will just pull those guys out by hand here. Or will I? Yes, I will. And here's the other one. Okay, you come on out of here. It's a brand new gun. Like I said, sometimes these are a little tight. But I'll get my... And every once in a while, get a longer pin. And get that guy to come out, just like that. Okay, so those two guys are out, and then we have the trigger housing pin back here. So we'll do the same thing, and this typically can come out with a hand pressure, but there we go. And a little bit more. Like I said, when these guns are brand new, the pins are a little bit tighter, which is good. Okay, so all the pins are out, and I always want to be very careful when I take things out so I know when they go back and how they go back in. So this will be the slide stop lever. Okay, it comes straight out, lifts out, and I want to make sure I know where it goes back in. And I do, of course. The locking block will come out now, and I'm going to just use a punch as a lever to kind of get underneath there and pull that locking block straight out. And then I can pull it out by hand. Now it's time for the trigger bar and the trigger housing mechanism, and that's this whole piece right here is all going to come out at one time. One of the things to keep in mind is this little ear right here is what intersects onto the safety plunger. And that, when you pull the trigger, it goes up, and it actually will intersect and hit the safety plunger, which allows the striker to go forward. So that's why that lighter spring makes sense, okay? Okay, so now I'm going to pull up on the ejector, and the whole trigger mechanism will come out just like that. Okay? And there's the frame. Pretty cool, huh? That's really cool. Every time I take this gun apart, I always go, wow, that's just amazing. That guy, Gaston Glock, did a great job on this, and it's pretty darn incredible. Now, to take the trigger bar out of the trigger housing, we're going to go ahead and compress this guy, and we're just going to pull it forward and twist it. That's it. And there's that spring we're talking about, okay? And I want you to take a pause right here just to look at how the spring is installed, okay? As we pull the spring out, you're going to notice that if we look at it really close right here, the open end of the spring is facing to my right, okay? And then the open end of the other side is facing to my left. So this spring, as it's installed in the gun, forms an S. Open on the top, open on the bottom. There's coils in between, of course, but keep that in mind, okay? There's an S that you're looking for, because when you put this spring back in, you can get confused, and if you put it in the wrong way, it's not going to work. Okay, so let me see, you can make sure you can see this spring and how it's captured. So it's captured in a hole right here in the trigger bar. There you go, right there, that hole. And it's captured in a hole in the trigger housing mechanism, which is right down there. Okay, so I can twist it around just like that, and I'm going to take it off the trigger bar first. Just yank it off. And then here's the, and I'm going to take it off with the, now the trigger housing. This one's a little trickier, but it comes off. It does. You just have to work it out a little bit. Okay. So that is the factory, oops, trigger spring. See if I can hold it like that. Okay. And again, when I put it back in, when I install it, I want to make sure it has the S. Jeez, it's tiny. So when I install it, I want to make sure, to my viewpoint, it looks like this, because there's it's backwards to you right now, but to me it's like this. So if you were installing it, it's going to look like that to you. All right? Okay, so now I'm going to put this one aside. I'm going to grab the aftermarket spring. So here's the aftermarket spring. And I'm going to grab my trigger bar, and first I'm going to put it on the trigger bar like so. And you could do this in either way. You could put it in the trigger bar, or you can put it in the trigger housing, your choice. And then I'm going to hold it like so, and I'm going to come down here to the trigger housing and find that hole, which is right there. And I'm going to come in from the inside and put this guy into that hole, just like that. Whoops. There we go. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. All right. Now you'll notice why you don't want that to be reversed, because it could come off of those pieces. So now I want to drop this guy in, and as I drop it into the trigger housing, I want to just twist it and pull forward and then put it back in place, just like that. Okay? And so I'm going to put it back in the frame real quick for us and put this gun back together. Trigger housing goes in first, making sure that my trigger is going to drop in there as well. So the trigger pad should go down first, excuse me. The trigger housing goes in, the whole mechanism goes in first. Pad comes in, make sure it fits, make sure the everything lines up there, and just push down. Watch, you'll hear this sound typically. Always good. That's a good sound right there too. So you know everything's in the right place. The other thing you want to do is just look through your holes real quick. So if we look right here, you should be able to see some light. Okay, that means everything's matching up. Same thing over here, looking at this hole. That's the trigger hole. Let's see if I can get it lined up for the camera. Okay. I'll put it up here so you can see it a little better. Now, obviously that's the trigger in a way, so we got to just make sure when we put our pins in, we have it lined up properly. Fairly easy so far. Now, we're going to go ahead and put the locking block in. We've got the trigger in, locking block's going to go drop right in top here. And it drops into the top of the gun. And now, again, kind of just looking inside, make sure all my pins are lined, or my holes are lined up still, and looks good. And I can actually right now put in the locking block pin. And I prefer to put it in now for a lot of reasons. One of which is to make sure that this slide stop lever is in the right place. So the locking block pin gets kind of lined up. Everything's good. Just give it a tap and it's going to go right in. And now I use the nylon side of this hammer to kind of true that up a little bit. That's what's nice about this hammer, is you can kind of pound on the polymer frame without damaging it. Okay, so now, before we put the trigger pin in, we want to put our slide stop lever in, okay? It's very important that this spring goes underneath that locking block pin. So there's a little slot in here, and if you noticed how you took it out, you should just drop it straight in, right in. And I'm going to go ahead and now center it up and make sure my holes match. And let's see if I can get you some light through there. I'll come up here a little bit more, and right there. Okay, now notice, see that right there, what's going on? You want to make sure that you have light there before you start to put your pin in, because you can and will bend this item. That hole lines up with the holes in the frame and the holes in the trigger. Okay, so if you're not careful and you start to pound it in, you have it off, it'll get stuck, and if you keep pounding, it'll bend. I've done that once, okay? So you learn by the hard way, and hopefully I can teach you how not to do certain things. But now, get that lined up, kind of hold it. Like I said, I've got it kind of held right now. It looks good. I've got it captured with my thumb because it does want to move out. There's a little spring pressure there. I'm going to get my trigger pin, get it started by hand. I can actually push it in almost the whole way here, and then give it a couple taps, and voila. We now have the gun almost assembled. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my trigger housing pin, and I'm just going to tap that guy in too. Easy enough. Okay, now the last part is the final assembly. Let me go ahead and put my barrel back in, guide rod back in. You know, we changed these guide rods out from plastic to the stainless steel. Get much better performance, much better results. Gun shoots and feels a lot better. But for now, this is a factory gun with a competition spring kit installed. Ooh, yeah. I mean, just that alone will reduce the trigger pull by at least a pound, if not a pound and a half, 2 pounds. You know, the factory trigger pulls are, they say 5.5. We put a weight on them. They're typically 6, 6.5, 5 3/4. They're never 5.5. With this spring kit, it's definitely 4. And that is, you know, as fairly simple and easy to do as anything else we have. But this guy, for the value, you know, it's basically $10. For the value, you really get a lot of, you know, accuracy, because accuracy is based upon trigger pull. If you're yanking on the trigger and you're doing a lot of trigger pulls, after a while your finger gets tired, and you're also disturbing the sight picture as you're pulling on the trigger. And because you're disturbing the sight picture, you're disturbing your accuracy, and you're not as consistent, and you're not as accurate from shot to shot. But this competition trigger pull, the competition trigger spring kit, really makes a lot of sense. Hope you've enjoyed the installation process. It was fun to do. Nice to be with you again, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching. I'm Lenny McGill for GlockStore Performance Center.